Hey folks, it's Rob Plux here with another Sunday session, and today we're going to be talking about importing building materials from overseas. Now, a lot of us find the cost of construction has gone through the roof, and we're looking for different ways that we can actually get economies of scale in what it is that we're doing. So whether you're doing an absolutely small project or you're doing something massive, there are opportunities to import your materials from overseas. Now, in order to do that, I've got a very special guest here, Lindy Chen from ChinaDirect Imports. So Lindy, how are you?
Good morning, Rob. Very good.
So we're going to be talking all about importing from China and I guess some of the issues and challenges and also the opportunities that are actually sitting there. So now before we talk about that, tell us a little bit about who is Lindy and who is ChinaDirect Sourcing and how did this all come about?
Well, Lindy Chen, I'm the founder and managing director of ChinaDirect Sourcing. We established in year 2005. That's nearly 20 years ago. And we helped thousands and thousands of Australian businesses importing products from China. And we have more than 30,000 suppliers on our database.
So, wow, 30,000 and 20 years, that's a massive amount of time. And I guess while we're talking about, I guess, the building and construction industry, you're looking at many industries, aren't you?
Absolutely. Not only we focus on like construction industry, we actually help our customer import from button to bulldozer. But however, recently in construction industry, we successfully secured over $130 million procurement contract, and that is very special in the construction industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, let's talk about the opportunity. A lot of people, I guess, seeing the expense of the building materials having gone up over the last couple of years, an extraordinary amount. They're looking to make some savings. What kind of savings could they anticipate by going down an approach using services like yourselves?
Well, in general, to say we can easily help our client save, from 30% to 50%, and that really depends on the size of the project, and then the product they're choosing, and also the method they use. But to some extreme, we save our client like 70% or even more. Some project we would save like say 20%. So it really depends on their own particular projects.
Yeah, and every project is unique. Some people are just doing, I guess, a small knockdown rebuild, and some people are building, a 200 apartment complex and that sort of thing. So obviously, economies of scale come from a lot of those things, and we're going to talk about a little bit later in the show how that plays out when they've got smaller scales. But there's still savings to be had all the way around. I guess one of the reasons why importing from China is so attractive is when we go onto our retail shelf and we go into all of our different suppliers here in Australia, in many instances, it is already made in China in the first place. And so I guess what we're looking at here is the ability to potentially shortcut the retail market and go wholesale. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the pathway and the solution we have created, enabled, the smaller developers to buy directly from the Chinese factory, from the Chinese outlet.
Yeah, and also one of the opportunities that a lot of people probably don't even think to realize, China supplies many markets, not just Australia. And so quite often there's product that is created in China that might go to the US market or the European market and that sort of thing. So just the variety of product now starts to become wider. Now there's some challenges with regards to Australian standards and things like that, but the opportunity to create a different and unique product that nobody else is doing as well.
Absolutely. We have quite a few customers, and then they actually buy the products and then rebrand it, like put their own brand and then sell it in Australian market. Used to be sell very well in America or in UK, and they haven't come to Australian market yet, and they do that. And so then therefore create a particular unique space for them in the Australian market.
Yeah. So we understand the opportunity, but there's a whole bunch of challenges and a whole bunch of complexities that when people start going down this path, it can become a little bit overwhelming. So I'm going to dive into each of the individual challenges and I guess dive into why sometimes that can be a little bit complex for people. And then at the end of this, we'll kind of understand how does China Direct Sourcing solve a lot of those problems. So let's start with the first one, quality control. Now, China's got a little bit of a reputation that they have two completely different standards of quality. They've got the cheap and nasty quality, and then they've got this really high-end product that is created. So that quality control, when we're ordering overseas, we don't know which version of that we're actually getting.
Exactly right. And so therefore, for us to help our client to do that quality control or quality issue, it's a very similar thing. Like, you have find a supplier in Australia. They are what we call the good supplier, and they are shonky supplier. And to identify the good supplier, need a constant, systematic way to dig out the golden nuggets.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you've got, I think you said 30,000 different suppliers on your database.
Yes.
That's a lot. How do you keep up with all of that?
Well, we have the technology behind it. Not only we have ChinaDirect Sourcing, we have the company called Freezen. That is the technology platform behind it. And so therefore, we have the team, we have the development team, we have the tech team, and to support, we're actually managing the large database. And we use a systematic way to help our clients to identify the gold supplier.
Okay, so you've got a wide range of suppliers that we can actually choose from. I guess from me as a consumer, if I'm looking for alternative product out there without having your massive 30,000 database of suppliers, typically I'm just going to do some basic Google searching, and I'm going to look at suppliers like Alibaba and the like. And you've mentioned that there's a couple of other local, I guess, websites that do similar. So I think you said, and I might pronounce this wrong, Taobao and Dunhuang.
Dunhuang, yes, Taobao and Dunhuang.
Yeah, I won't get the pronunciation right. But so all of those suppliers out there, they're going to list all of the different products that are out there with all the different manufacturers. But if you're scouring all of that, you've got no idea behind the scenes whether or not those suppliers are good or not.
You are absolutely right. When we shortlist a supplier for our customer, we are not only just look at the price only. So at least there are 8 metrics we would look into before we assess a particular given supplier. Number one, for instance, would be their track records in export, and which country do they export to, such as America, USA, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, etc., etc. So look at their track records on export history. And number 2 is their quality control system. Do they have any Australian standard compliance, or like UK quality control compliance, or any particular certificate? Number 3 is their price competitiveness. Whether they are in the market, in the range, and compared to other supplier. And number 3 is they are such as the person you are dealing with, and whether they are professional or not. Another one would be their website. They're looking and touch and feel how really dealing with you. Another one is their internal system. And so you have the whole matrix to look at it, this manufacturer, whether you actually choose to use or not.
So that's a whole bunch of stuff. And so if they don't pass all 8 of those tests, they don't make it onto that 30,000 list of database. Is that right?
So in general, to say in our database, we have done, this is our 20 years of work. We have accumulated its asset, and certainly it benefited to many of our customers.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so even if we did scour those people, and even if we found some products that we think we like, then there starts to become some other problems. So, for example, the product, we don't know whether or not that supplier meets the Australian standards, and so if we import the product, it might not be legally compliant here. So there's a whole bunch of standards that exist out there. What would be the thing that you're looking for to ensure that that supplier's got the right certifications?
In generally to say, when we look at the supplier, and especially if the products related and need to be import require the Australian standards, then we would only choose the supplier who has the Australian certificate or like standards. Otherwise, it's too difficult for the smaller player playing in the importing field.
So what if there's this really great product that I find, it's the only thing, it's perfect for my, I'm trying to do this really fantastic high-end product, and this supplier has never imported to Australia, hasn't got any Australian standards. Is there a process that we could actually onboard that supplier and actually go through the journey because we really want that product? Is that possible?
Absolutely, that's very possible. Then we can work with the customer and work with the supplier, and then to enable that process happening. Quite often, we will talk to the relevant authority, like in Australia, and then to understand their requirements, and then having the supplier like providing all the documentation meets the requirements. What will happen is the most difficult part is the manufacturer does not know what Australian authority normally require, and we became the agent to assist them to, be compliant and fill in all the documentation and to apply for that certification. And quite often, it can happen.
And I'm assuming that process takes quite some time to do. So if we're looking at doing something like that, how much extra time and effort does that add to the process?
Well, in that scenario, that will probably more decided by the local bureau of Australian relevant department. For example, one of my customer imported the buggy and to be used in the golf course, and that actually need Australian motor vehicles license. So then in the end, we speed up the process. We got that motor vehicle license for that buggy within 20 days. But also because of the local government is willing to speed up the process. So that's the whole license application probably only take around 30 days. But some other permits, and it really depends on what the Australian government says.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. So I've searched my supplier. I found a supplier that I like, that sort of thing. I'm looking at their website, but everything's written in Chinese. I don't know how to interpret that. How do I even know that that product is fit for purpose? There's going to be, not only is there going to be language barrier differences, but there'll also be cultural differences. So when we're trying to have these conversations and negotiate, that can be quite tricky, yes?
Oh, absolutely. Quite often, sometimes talk about the language barrier, and there are many jokes, and and you sometimes went to a Chinese bank, you see the translation says to male only, and then you wonder what? Like, what about the female customer? So actually, it's a literally translation wrong, and it says to business only. But the Chinese translation to business and to male is the same words as gong So therefore, some literal translation doesn't make any sense. And then, in another scenario, like you talk about the language barrier. So you saw a sign says that, sliding carefully. So in actually the fact it says, it's very be careful. It's very slippery, and don't slide. So the translation sometimes can get you nowhere, and therefore you really need someone understand the cultural difference, understand the language to facilitate the transaction.
And I'm not Chinese in any way, shape, or form. So, but my understanding is it's because the language is a tonal language and not a spelling language. And so sometimes the word can be spelt the same way but pronounced differently and have very different meanings.
Absolutely right.
Yeah. So there's lots of ways, and I'm not even going to attempt to do any of that. I'll get it completely wrong. But hence why sometimes I guess that literal translation goes wrong. So okay, so you help us to actually navigate the cultural differences and the language barriers and that sort of thing to actually get that translation correct. But then many times the suppliers that we're trying to deal with, they're wanting to deal with business to business. They're not wanting to deal with business to consumer. And so if we are one person placing one order, sometimes there's going to be all sorts of challenges with regards to minimum order quantities, or the fact that they just don't want to deal with one person. So how does your organization help to navigate that?
Perfect. There are two opportunities arise from there. One is, for any single like small developers, and they have multiple items but a small quantity, such as 3 doors, 4 windows, 1 bathroom, 1 kitchen, etc., etc. Many different items, but like a large variety. Then we would design what we call the China buying trip. So through China buying trip, you have a list of the item you want to buy for your development, for your construction project. And then you also have the detailed assessment says how much it's going to cost you locally. So you have a budget in your mind. Then we would review your list of the products and then give the recommendation says, yep, Rob, the item 1, 2, 3 is good for importing, item 6, 7 maybe not, or etc. And then we do a little bit of research beforehand. We prepare the itinerary. We will then suggest, Rob, you have a trip to China. Okay, we take you to the wholesale market. You can see and feel and touch the product. You make decision, you buy this, buy that. And because you already know the local price, so when you go to China, you take that price in your hand. You can do the comparison straight away and you make a decision, you buy this or not. So therefore, after your trip, then we consolidate all your container together and then put everything in one shipment and deliver to your site. So then in that way, we overcome the minimum order quantity, and as well as, to simplify the process and consolidate the container and do the cost saving. Not only that, but also because we have already done $130 million procurement contract for other developers and for other projects, so we can tap into existing opportunity we have created, the relationship we had with the supplier to enable the smaller developer like you to utilize those the strengths.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned a potential trip. So is that going to individual factories, or is that going to places like the Canton Fair, or is there a combination of both?
Well, in general, to say it's a combination of a wholesale market and the factory. And Canton Fair is different. Canton Fair is you can see and you can have a feel, you can't buy.
Okay.
So, but China buying trip is designed for you to buy. It's ready, you see and feel and touch, and you can buy, place the order on the spot.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so we've worked out how to do our minimum quantities. We've worked out how to, if we haven't quite got that right, but then there's just the the international trade complexities. So there's customs rules, there's things like import duties, there's all sorts of things like that that start to challenge us. What are some of the problems that we need to think about?
Well, you see, let's say, for instance, when you export products from China, and there are 5 different prices you talk about. The first one we call the XW, EXW price. So-called EXW price means X work out from the factory. Then you have FOB price. So-called FOB price is free on board. That means the products from the factory delivered to China port. And then the next price is called the CIF, cost of goods plus insurance plus the freight. That means when the products delivered to Australian port. And then you have a landed price. That means when the products went through the custom and went through local delivery, delivered to your site. So therefore, quite often, when you're dealing with the importing process, you need to understand what price is the best scenario for your situation. For example, if you import one item and large quantity, usually we would recommend get the price as FOB price. But say, for instance, for buying China buying trip, you buy from wholesale market, you paid everything in Chinese currency, which is the renminbi. Then all of those products you get price as X work, which is EXW price. So have to then put into one warehouse in Guangzhou and consolidate all of them in one container, and then do all the Chinese custom clearance, fumigation in one go, and then became FOB price in one container, and generate bill of lading, then to export to Australia.
It's a lot of complexity, which is why a lot of people don't do this. Then on top of that, okay, even if we do all of that, a really, really interesting one, which I didn't know anything about until you mentioned to me before, Lindy, is the fact that the banking system in China is completely different to here in Australia. And there's no such thing as a BSB or an account number. So sometimes you want to buy something, but we just don't even know how to pay for it.
Exactly right. And especially recently, China made it even more difficult for foreigners. In our system, we have a BSB and we have account number. But in China, they don't have such a thing. So therefore, when you start to transfer money directly from your bank account to the supplier, it's extremely difficult, especially when you're trying to fill in the remittance, like the note, and you find quite often can easily lost. One of my customer filled in, money. It's not a lot, probably around $15,000, but then the money lost in somewhere, and he doesn't even know. The supplier's bank didn't receive it. His bank says send it, and don't know where the money is. So not only that, and dealing with 20 or 30 suppliers in one go when you try to pay money to them, and especially in wholesale market, because it's X work. So therefore, they ask you to pay Chinese currency, which is the renminbi. It can be very challenging because you cannot. In China, most of the payment now use digital payment, which is WeChat Pay and also Alipay. But as a foreigner, we can't have a WeChat Pay account because we don't have the Chinese bank account. And we can't use Alipay either because we don't have a Chinese bank account. So make it extremely difficult. And sometimes in wholesale market, you have to use cash to pay. And imagine how much cash you have to bring with you.
Yeah, well, there's rules about how much cash you're allowed to carry over the border, so that makes things difficult as well. So all of that, plus I guess just the fact that it's a different currency as well means that there's going to be, I guess, currency fluctuations. So the price might not change, but just because the international currency rate changes from time to time can have an impact on price as well.
Yeah. Sometimes, that's why have a little bit of prior planning is probably more better. And then knowing sometimes, we have one scenario, we lock the price for the supplier for nearly 2 years.
Yeah, wow. And then you transfer the money when the Australian dollar is doing much better, yes?
Yes. We only pay a small amount of deposit first. And
Yes.
then we hold it. Yes.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, so all of that is great. We've worked out what we want. We've worked out, I guess, how to source it and how to price it and how to now pay for it. Now we've got to worry about, I guess, warranty on the product. So if we're going to be importing this into Australia, and if my understanding at least, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is if I import it, then I become the importer. And so I'm the one who has to provide the warranty for this.
That's correct. So normally we would recommend our customer says, look, your total project, let's say is 200,000, right? And if you're going to buy from Australia, it's going to cost you 200,000. But because you buy from China, it saved you $100,000. So therefore, then from that $100,000 you saved, you allocate maybe say 5%, which is $5,000 as just the budget for in case something happen. So then in that way,
contingency, basically to say what happens if something goes wrong.
Yeah. So then in that way, you still get the benefit, but you're not panic. You're not spending like 100,000 you have already saved. You are not prepared for it. You prepare for if something happen. But of course, in the whole scenario, we choose the best quality product. We choose the best, the supplier. We make sure the whole process is take care of properly. But of course, you still prepare some contingency.
Yeah. And that supplier would still have an obligation for warranty to us. But where I'm talking about is the ultimate consumer who buys the finished house off of us. We are their warranty supplier. So we have to, I guess, have this double-sided transaction where we're looking after our purchaser and then we're dealing with the factory at the same time. So now the factory might give us a new one. They should. That's what they're meant to do. But if they don't, there's a legal process and legal differences between the two countries. And we've got to look at, firstly, which country should we be trying to chase them in? And secondly, is it worthwhile given the additional costs and complexity of doing that? So which country should we sue them in if they provide a faulty product, Lindy?
China, absolutely, China. And also another thing is it's a very similar thing like you do in Australia. You also can buy insurance for when you transit the products from China to Australia as well. And then usually the insurance company have a local agent in Brisbane, Melbourne, or Sydney. And before you open the container, you can actually, if something happens, you can call them. And they will tell you what to do. They either say, take a photo, send to us, then you can open the container, or they will say, wait, we will send the agent to your container to see what happens.
Yeah. So all of that now, we've got to the point where we've purchased our product, that sort of thing. We've navigated how do we get it across the border, but it's not actually made it into a container yet. We've still got to put it on a ship and still got to kind of get it here. How does that work from a freight and logistics perspective? What are some of the issues and challenges from a freight perspective?
Well, you see, then first of all, you need to clear the Chinese custom. To clear the Chinese custom is not an easy job, especially you have multiple items. And then you have to go through the Chinese custom. Number two, you have to go through the fumigation and make sure the fumigation certificate, it meets Australian standard. And once that is done, the next one is to arrange the shipping and then make sure you choose the right port arriving Australia, and also the right shipping line. Sometimes the shipping line can be like a direct shipping line, which takes 17 days from Guangzhou, say, for instance, Brisbane. Sometimes it can go through transit and, go through Singapore. And, it really depends on which shipping line you choose. And then not only that, you're dealing with the supplier or the customer, custom in China, and also what we call have to do telex releasing, which doesn't have to wait original bill of lading send it to you, and it will take too long. So we usually talk to the supplier, make sure it does telex releasing, which means once you pay the balance, and then the telex is, the bill of lading is released to you. So then therefore, once it's arrived in Australian port, and you can do the custom clearance in Australian side, and then arrange the local delivery, deliver to the site.
But there's a lot of complexity in that. And then all of that, we haven't even talked about, are we putting this in a cardboard box? Are we putting this in a shipping container? We're sending this via international freight. What's the most cost-effective way to import? What's the most cost-effective?
Well, it's usually when we look at the container, like a list of the products, so you review all of them. Then one thing we always have to remember is called economy of the scale. So number one, you look at it, the list of the products, is it going to fit it to a 20-foot container or 40-foot container? And so therefore you work out what would be the item I needed, the essential item, and what are the option item. So you work out the volume of the essential item. Let's say, for instance, the essential item like a kitchen, bathroom, windows and doors and the tiles, etc., are all already purchased for 2-bedroom townhouses, 3-bedroom townhouses, 4 of them, 5 of them. Then the whole list now is already, say, for instance, 50 cubic meter. And then it definitely have to go to a 40-foot container. For a 40-foot container, the total capacity is about 58 cubic meter. So you have 8 cubic meter left. Then therefore, you can choose some other optional item, such as, for instance, the insulation products. And for in the insulation products, it can condense. And also, then if you still have 2 cubic meter, you can order maybe some furniture, you can order some linen for your house, or you can order something extra to utilize that capacity. And so that is what we call the economy of the scale, to make sure the whole shipping is not only take advantage of the price of the goods, but also the freight. We make it very cost effective. And the third one is also look at it, whether you are a farm or whether you have like extra space, or whether you want to build some like a particular like a studio. You can actually purchase in the container from China and together with your goods. So you only say pay the freight once. And therefore, once the container arrived at your site, you can keep that container after, and then you have a space to secure all your goods. And then once you use up all the goods, and then you can refurbish that container into a studio, 1-bedder, or or you can sell it, or you can relocate your other property, something like that.
Lots of opportunities and hence lots of complexities in doing all of that. But the key takeaway is we want to get it to a 20-foot or a 40-foot container, and sometimes that means not purchasing something so that it fits in a container, and other times it says, well, we've actually got more room. Could we buy more stuff? And what might those other things might be? Sometimes maybe a big screen TV, who knows, or a fridge. Okay, so some complexities with regards to the size of the order that we're actually doing, because you're dealing with wholesale manufacturing companies, and so I can imagine that there's lots of different opportunities where they don't want to be doing small little orders, but at the same time, because you're doing many orders for many people, they like the economies of scale that comes with that. So if I've got, let's just go through the 3 different scenarios that might actually happen here. If I've got one item and I only need one of them, like, what do I do in that instance?
Well, if you want one item and one of them and one off, then buy in Australia. Don't use us.
Because no efficiencies of scale. All right,
Correct.
doesn't make sense. Okay, what if the opposite? I've got one item, but I've got hundreds of these that I need.
Well, in that case, we would recommend like go through ChinaDirect Sourcing's research and tender process. So then in that, we probably will contact more than 30 suppliers in that category. We will prepare request for quotes. We will ask the supplier to tender. We will prepare a supply summary report, quote comparison report, landed cost analysis, and to make sure everything was taken into consideration, and then shortlist the 3 suppliers for this particular project to continue.
Perfect. And what about the most likely one for small scale developers? I've got many items, but small quantities.
So in that scenario, we would highly recommend the China buying trip. And with China buying trip, you can actually physically go to China with us, or you stay home and via video, we do the purchasing for you. So either way, it's okay. However, we prefer you go to China, actually, because then you can see and feel and touch. For many items and a small quantity, so you have a list of the item and everything you want to buy for this particular project. You make sure you get the list either from your architects or from the quantity surveyor. And then once you have that, you also have a budget about how much it's going to cost in Australia. And then we take you to the China wholesale market. So before you go, we actually will study your list, and then we arrange the itinerary. We share that itinerary with you. Then we send you an invitation letter. We suggest, like Rob, go to China for 3 days, 4 days. And then we take you to the factory, to wholesale market. And then you see and feel and touch the product, and it's in your hand. You compare the prices. You often find the price in Australia and compared to in China is about 30, 50, 70% cheaper. And sometimes, even with lesser money, but quality also much higher. You have a much more variety to choose from. So in that, we have many case study for our client, the China buying trip, and saved 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 easily.
Yeah. So, which means that I guess, is it a tax deductible trip? Can you answer that?
Absolutely, because it is a tax deductible trip because we issue you the invoice.
So, folks, I have to say, that's not advice. Okay, I always have to put this little disclaimer up when things like that, educational in nature, and not advice. Make sure you actually speak to your accountant on that. But I guess in theory, it should be able to, because it's going directly to a project. So, but yes, make sure you get that signed off, folks. Okay.
Yeah, because not only that, you have plenty of things to support that, such as itinerary, the list of the products, and then the cost saving, and also the itemized the product sourcing. And I have never had any issue for my customer claim our invoice for their project. Yeah.
So, okay. So all of this we've just covered. It is quite a complex process to actually do, Lindy, hence why your organization ChinaDirect Sourcing actually exists. So if somebody wanted to engage with ChinaDirect Sourcing, what is the process that they actually would go to engage with yourselves?
Well, yes, they can, contact me through www.ChinaDirectSourcing.com.au, or they can send us an email, or if you like, I can share my number as well, which is 0418 899 698. 0418 899 698. You can send me a text message, you can give me a call, and we can certainly look into your project. And also, we are doing a national tour around like Australia. And also, you can always contact Rob or Paula, PDN. We are PDN's annual member as well, and we are here to serve. We are here to make this community better.
Yeah, I guess we'll just touch on the fact that Lindy and I are trying to work on a solution that's going to help our whole organization to say, start that again. We're trying to help our whole community of how do we actually engage and get better pricing for all of our products and services and that sort of thing. So we're working on something big in the background, folks. I don't want to announce what that is just yet because there's still a whole bunch of stuff that needs to go in the back end, but trying to make that more efficient, more effective for absolutely everyone. Lindy, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you, some of the issues and challenges that are sitting behind us, and the opportunities, more importantly, that are actually sitting, in front of everyone. Thank you very much for your time and actually going through all of that. Any parting words of wisdom that you would like to give our audience?
Well, absolutely. One thing I would say, have an open mind. Try something new. And sometimes China, or buying from China, or group buying from China, group buying construction material from China, it's like a faster train. Doesn't matter you get on board or not, the train will go. And if you jump in on board, the train will take you. If you don't, train will leave without you. So the benefit of importing from China and join this buying group, join Rob and Lindy together, importing from China, it's like opportunity, it's like a window. And I want to encourage you, just give it a try, give it a go, send your product list, and then we will give you a review. Then you can see how will that look like. And only when we have a saying in Chinese, doesn't matter how lucky you are, even when the gold landed in front of you, you still need to pick it up. So the opportunity is there, and we just want you to get on board, pick up this opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lindy. It's been an absolute pleasure. Now, folks, we get industry experts in here all the time to try and help you, get to know different issues and challenges and problems in your community. We also get them at our monthly events that we run all the way around the country. So we run these events in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide. And they are physical in each individual location. Plus, we live stream them. So no matter where you are, you're always going to get an industry expert just like Lindy, helping you on your journey. Folks, looking forward to seeing you all at our next meetup. So Lindy, thank you very much for your time. And I'm going to say signing off for now.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay, bye folks.
Bye.